Matthew chapter 5, verse 27. You have heard that was said to those of old, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that whoever looks at a woman to lust for her has committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out, cast it from you. For it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off, cast it from you. For it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. Let's bow in prayer. We just want to state to you, Jesus, that we are wide open to you. We're not asking for ease. We're not asking for comfort. We're not even asking for blessing. We're not asking for you to solve our problems. We're not asking for a free meal. We're not asking, touch my flesh, make me feel better. We're not asking you to intervene in our circumstances. We're asking that somehow, some way, all of my stubbornness, all of my resistance, anything within me that hinders you from moving in my life. I don't know that there's any there. But knowing me, you've probably got some things to work on. So anything that you need to come after, anything that you need to deal with in my life, I'm inviting you. I want you. And not that you wouldn't do it even if I didn't invite you, because you're just that loving. But I want you to know I want you to do this. I'm pledging myself today that whatever you speak to me about, however you deal with me, I will say yes. I will respond. Let your word do a revelation to me and in me that has been unprecedented up to this time. I'm asking for that today, for myself and for these that I love. In the name of Jesus I pray. Amen. I'm not very, what should I say? I'm not very good at discernment. I don't have a lot of discernment. In other words, I don't stand up before a crowd and say, oh, there's somebody here that's got a slip disc and needs prayer. I'm not criticizing anybody who can do that. God gives insight. I'm for that. Hallelujah. I've just never had that. I seldom know what's going on with anybody. In fact, to tell you the truth, I seldom know what's going on in my own heart and mind and in the depth. I know something's going on. I know through this period of time that we've been dealing with this passage, something has been going on in my life that is different than what was going on. So there's a sense in which we are moving to a new level, and not just in data and information, biblical information, but in spiritual perception and in spiritual walk, which is a positive, not a negative. It's a positive. And what I realized was, and I wish that in this setting, what I really wish was that I could be in your living room and we just sit down and talk about this. That this wasn't a preaching scene. Just sit down and talk to you about this. But I realized, and I think that's what scared me about the Sermon on the Mount as we've been trying to walk through it, and why I've stayed away from it all these years, is because I knew that there's something going on in the Sermon on the Mount that you just don't want to mess with. It's better off not to know. In that sense. But here we are. And I'm begging you to stick with me on this. Not this morning, but I'm begging you to stick with me on this because this is hard material. And I'm begging you that you would, along with me, would have open hearts and open minds to say, hey, I'm responsive. I really want this. wherever God wants to take me in all of this. I don't want to deal with surface stuff. I'm sick of that. And I'm definitely sick of religion. And what I really want to deal with is what he is discussing in this passage, which is the depth of the human heart. And I want my heart to be filled with him, and I want to know exactly what he wants. And so I'm begging you to stick with me on this. What kind of demeanor, what kind of action, what outpour of your life would you have if you were going into a burning building and you knew there were children in the bedroom asleep? Would you say, well, I think I'll get a cup of coffee before I tackle that one? Would you say, well, listen, I'll try to text and see if that wakes them? Or would you rush in, being the kind of person you are, would you not rush in, kick the door in, yell and scream, and say, hey, wake up! You got to get out of here! And go over and shake them and grab them and pull them. If you were standing on a river bank and watching a family enjoying themselves in fishing, and you knew that just a quarter of a mile down the way, as they were drifting, they were headed for a falls, what would you do? Would you say, well, not my responsibility. Hope to make it. Boy, life is going to be tough for them. Or would you begin to yell and say, hey, hey, whoa! Which is exactly what Jesus is doing in the passage. The two verses that we've been started on last Sunday is 29 and 30. And verse 29 and 30 is over the top. It's I can't tell you how radical this is. It's extreme. It's yelling and screaming. It's hey, hey, hey. And he goes way overboard to emphasize the absolute necessity of coming to grips with what's going on in your heart. This is not a tweak your attitude session. This is not, well, yeah, you got some things you need to work on. This is not, well, God's not done with me yet. Hey, we're on our way. That's not what this is. See, this is a kick in the teeth. This is a slap in the face. This is a bucket of cold water on the head. This is a yell, scream, hey, 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 kind of thing. All the verbs, the main verbs are imperative, which gives you this command idea. The logic he uses of, hey, whatever you got to do, man, cut your hand off, gouge out your eye. See, that's wild language. Come on. Any way you slice that kind of thing, that's mercy. Why would a preacher even suggest? But in the context of all of this, you don't get one single, this is so beautiful, you don't get one single ounce of judgment. See, there's no finger, you don't stand on the bank and see a family fishing that's drifting towards the falls and wag your finger at them and say, well, you're going to get what you deserve. Well, you should have known what the river was before you got into it. See, there's none of that in this passage. See, there's not bursting through the door, coming in when kids are sleeping in the midst of a fire and saying, well, yeah, your parents shouldn't have smoked cigarettes in the bed. You left the pan on the stove. You're getting exactly what, hey, good enough for you. See, there's none of that in this passage. This passage is, hey, I can't stand it. Hey, I can't take what's going on here. Hey, we got to go. Hey. This is driven by this. Isn't that beautiful? This is driven by this. No condemnation. This is driven by this passion of a Jesus who's willing to leap off his throne, second member of the Trinity, and set aside everything that he has as God and become total man, a helpless babe in a woman's womb, and literally go to a cross and say, hey, we're not talking about blame here. We're not talking about you could have and you should have. We're not talking about that. We're talking about, hey. Do you feel that? You don't look like you do, but do you feel that? See, this is an arm around your shoulder. This is a desperate desire. This is a caring heart. So, yeah, he's yelling. Yeah, he's bouncing up and down. Yeah, he's waving his arms. But see the heart of why he's doing it and his care. Now, we're suggesting to you, and what we're walking through is that there's three concepts in the two verses. And the three concepts, and we just started on the first one last Sunday, but the first concept is essentiality, which is the idea that this is absolutely essential. This is not surface stuff. This is not, well, some of you need to deal with this. This is absolutely everybody nailed against the wall, absolutely essential. You got to deal with this. This is really important. And that's dealing with that concept. The second concept that we're going to be dealing with is the eternalness, and I just want to keep this for you all the time. The second one is the idea of eternalness. That this whole business of sexuality, again, the old-timers, those of old, they put their whole sexuality over here in a little box and said, hey, it's just a body drive. It's no big deal. It's a hunger drive. It's got to be satisfied and dealt with like eating pie or chocolate. It's just, hey, it's what it is. And you just got to put a lid on it. You got to surround it, put some boundaries on it, and put some limits on it. And reached into the Old Testament, grabbed the Ten Commandments, the seventh one, don't commit adultery, so that's the lid. Everything else, hey, it's no big deal anyway. Jesus says, that's not true, guys. 10 billion years from this moment, you'll still live in a body with your sexuality someplace. And sexuality can't be limited to a mere sexual body drive. Sexuality is the flow of your entire existence. It's a makeup of who you are. Again, all the way from whiskers on your chin, all the way down to the way you walk, all the way to the way you dress, fix your hair, what you care about, your desires, the whole mannerism, you are infiltrated. You are an expression every single moment of your sexuality. So this is not about some body drive. And he says that physicalness, that sexuality of your being, you got to come to grips with that in your inner heart because you're going to live with that forever. And then the third one is the effects. And you will live with that forever. You may live with that forever in a place called hell, he brings up. Which again is a place, I get that. Are there flames? Hey, I don't know. I'm not planning on finding out. I don't know how you want to describe all that. Don't care. I know that if I don't deal with this in this lifetime, that what happens is that thing is so destructive at the core of my heart that it literally begins to envelop and destroy and smash, and we're going to get into this a little more today, begin to destroy and smash the entirety of my existence until when I end up in the destruction that goes on and on and on for eternity, it looks like and feels like and is hell itself. Those are the three concepts. So we're dealing this morning again with the sensuality of the spirit-sourced sexuality. Now, last week we brought up the subject of severity. And we suggested to you the tone of that severity was the fact that he is yelling. And it's found again in the verb forms of the imperative. We suggested to you the twice idea, that the severity is found in the twice, not only the tone of the passage, but the twice of it. He's given the verse twice. But we also discovered that he gave it in Matthew chapter 18. So these two verses show up in the Scriptures 2 times, which I think is mind-boggling. Here and in Matthew chapter 18. And both times they're spoken by Jesus. And both times they're spoken by Jesus in the midst of a disciple scene where they are discussing, well, one is discussing sexuality, the other is discussing which one of us gets to be number one. Well, how are those the same? Oh, those are. That's what he's trying to tell us, people. They are the same. Well, no, fighting over a position is not. Yes, it is. It's your sexuality showing up. It's a sexuality that's filled with self-centeredness. And your masculinity rises up and says, well, I'm going to be number one. What is that? Well, that's my sexuality, filled with itself. See, I got to win. Who said you had to win? Well, my self-centered sexuality says I'm a man and I got to win. That was Matthew chapter 8. He's dealing with that here in chapter 5. So the thing hasn't changed. So the severity is found in the tone idea, in the twice idea, and in the timing idea. Because the passage all bends itself to, you got to do something about this. You and I got to deal with this now. Well, go and think about it. No! No. Well, I'll wait till the altar call. No! Get out of your seat now! It's that kind of a deal. So the tone of this whole thing, severity of this whole idea is really strong. Now, today, we want to deal with the issue of stumbling. The essentiality of it found in the stumbling idea. And what he's basically saying in all of this essentiality is, this business of being right in your heart is so absolutely important, so absolutely high priority. It matters so much, ladies and gentlemen, that whatever you have to do to be right in the heart, do it. Whatever you have to have, whatever response you need to make, whatever you in your scene, whatever I in my scene of the heart and the sexuality and the self-centeredness at the heart level, whatever I have to do to deal with that, I got to hit that thing head on. I don't care how painful it is. If I got to cut off my right hand, great. Gouge out my eye, whatever. Nothing is more valuable than being right in the spiritual condition of your heart. Please, he's saying, please make the spiritual condition of your heart the absolute highest priority. Give all of your energy, focus all of your attention, just absolutely give your whole self to this one thing. Everything else is immaterial. Materialism, set it aside. Popularity, set it aside. Physical pleasure, whatever you got to do. Whatever you got to do to be right. It's because this is absolutely the most valuable, essential thing for your existence. Now, when you come to the stumbling idea, it's found in one word. It's the translation in my scriptures is verse 29. If your right eye causes you to sin. Causes you to sin. That's one word. It's the Greek word skandalizo. Skandalizo. When I say skandalizo to you, if you're thinking, you will recognize the word as scandal, which is where we get our word from. Skandalizo causes you to sin. It's interesting, the word sin is not there. So if you go to the Greek passage, you'll find skandalizo, but you won't find sin there. But it's contained within the skandalizo. It can mean offend. Often it's translated offend. It has the idea of lead astray, that kind of concept. It has the idea of lead into sin, which is why they translated it causes you to sin. And the whole idea has to do with there is an enemy. Now, we understand that. We've been around the church long enough to get that. We've followed Jesus in the book of Matthew and found there is an enemy that he himself was confronted with. So we get that idea. That's not new. And this enemy has one thing that it wants to get done, and that is the destruction of your life. And that the issue of the passage is not the issue of looking. We went through the progression of this. The idea is that deep in my heart, there is a self-centered nature. And this self-centered nature has grabbed a hold of the sexuality of my life that infiltrates my whole living. So when I look, what do I see? It's determined by the inner heart. So I don't look and lust and then have adultery in my heart. I have self-centered adultery in my heart, which causes me to look a certain way. So the viewpoint is determined by the inner heart. So the whole idea is don't cut off your hand, because what good would that do? That isn't what really offends. What really offends is the deep inner heart. So what you've got to go after, he says, is this heart, because it is what controls the viewpoint of your life. And your self-centeredness dominating the heart, reaching into the sexuality, spilling through the sexuality, is what is absolutely destroying you and is the core of the passage itself. Now, the idea of offend or causes you to sin is not the idea of, well, I'm afraid the tone of it is not the idea of, I'm afraid it will upset you. The tone of this whole stumbling idea is not, well, I'm afraid it's going to disturb you. The tone is, there's a destruction here. There is a ruin here. There is a violence here. That the enemy, in terms of the very essence of the causing to sin, is all wrapped up in this violent, destroying, ruin, smash your entire life. So the tone of this whole stumbling idea is very, very strong. The idea of causes, I don't want you to think in terms of makes you, because it isn't that. It doesn't make you. That's not the end point. It's not a force that you can't get around. It's not that kind of idea at all. It's the idea of a stick in a death trap. Now, grab a hold of this concept. It's not the wire that makes up the cage. It's not the door of the cage. It's not the bait that's placed in the cage. It's the stick that props the door up. The animal is allured in to take the bait, bumps the stick. We got him. It's the mousetrap concept. You got this piece of wood. I should have brought one. Got this piece of wood. Yeah. And you got this little flimsy thing. Put the bait on. Yeah. You got this spring. Oh, that's tight. Don't let go of it. You pull it down. And then you got this sconzaleo, which is the wire that hooks up over the spring thing, latches underneath where the bait is, and holds it all in tension. And when the mouse comes along and bites the cheese, bumps it, and whoa, bumps the stick, and wham, he's dead. That's this. Now again, he says, if your right hand is the stick in a death trap, cut the thing off, son. If the right eye, if that's the problem, gouge the thing out. Get rid of the stick. Because the whole trap revolves around the stick. But the impact of the passage, it isn't your right hand, it's the stick, is it? It isn't your right eye that's the stick, is it? What is the stick? It's what's in your heart. It's the nature of self-centeredness that's deep in my heart. That's the stick. And it isn't just one little area like, oh, put my little sex drive over here and just get a lid on. See, it isn't isolated. It spills through the whole sexuality of my being. It causes me to, hey, you're not going to get ahead of me in traffic. And you better not cut me off or I'll honk my horn. So it isn't the hand, is it? That's his whole idea. It isn't the hand. It isn't the eye. See, you got to go to the what is the stick? You got to deal with the stick. And the stick in the death trap is not the right hand and it's not the right eye. It's this nature. It's this self-centeredness. It's what's deep within you. So the tone is, hey, hey, hey. Look at this. Well, I could do, no. Look at this. Go here. Go to the core. Do you know how hard that is? Well, sure you do. See, I can deal with warts on my nose. But man, when you start messing with what I am in the inner core of my heart, see, I can adjust. Okay, I won't wear that anymore. But when you start, well, I've always been this way. I know. This is the way we are in Tennessee. Well, my dad was this way. See, this is that's the tone. Now let's go to the twice of the stumbling. That was the tone. Let's go to the twice idea. How do I deal with what's really is the stick in the death trap? How do I deal with that? He brings it up twice. Which, if your right eye quotes it twice. And friend, I just have no way to tell you biblically how that is an absolute yelling of the voice of Jesus to the human heart, saying, this matters so much that you, and his language again is so strong, cut it off. And we've gone through this before. But see, with the nature of self-centered at the heart, how you going to deal with that? Well, I'll ask Jesus to forgive me. Well, he won't do it. He won't do it. He's not going to forgive you for this. Well, Jesus always forgives. I know. But he's not going to forgive this one. Why? Because it doesn't solve the problem. This is not a forgivable thing. See, if it was a forgivable thing, he'd forgive you. Well, I told a lie. Will he forgive me for that? Yes. Well, I cussed his name. Will he forgive me? Yes. Will I spit in his face? Well, yes, he'll forgive you. I broke all 10 commandments at the same time. Will he forgive me? Yes. Yes. Well, will he forgive me of having self-centeredness in my heart? No. Why? Because it doesn't do anything for it. You go right on in self-centeredness. I go right on moving out of my self-centeredness because it doesn't change my inner heart. Well, what's going to change my inner heart? The whole biblical thrust of the answer to the problem is found in death, crucifixion. Well, this is an uplifter, isn't it? And the whole message is, come and die. Now, let me show you how strong this is. Because in the twice idea, he not only gave it twice here, but as we mentioned earlier, he gave it also, Jesus quoted these same identical statements in Matthew chapter 18. And we walked through that last Sunday. But let me just briefly give you that again. Jesus is in the last 6 months of his ministry. He comes to his disciples and says, I got to really train you and get you ready for the cross that's coming. And he begins to give the first prediction of his death and resurrection. He's going to give 3 of them. And this scene launches the first one. So he's going to talk to them about his death and resurrection. And they argue with him. They argue with him for 6 days. He takes 3 of them to the Mount of Transfiguration and is transfigured before their very eyes. Elijah come down and say, hey guys, he's telling you the truth. Listen to him. He's a bleeding, suffering, dying Messiah, and the cross is the way we're going to go. And they say, no. We don't want the cross. What we want is solve my problems, touch my flesh, make me feel better. Hey, shorten my nose, give my kids straight teeth. Could we eat chocolate and not get fat? That's what we want. And Moses and Elijah, law and prophets of the Old Testament, say, no, he's a bleeding, suffering, dying Messiah. This is all about dying. The Father comes down and overshadows the place and says, this is all about dying, guys. This is my beloved Son whom I will please. Shut up and listen to him. And the Father approves of it. They come down the mountain and discuss John the Baptist. John the Baptist, how did he get into this whole thing? Whoops, got his head cut off. This is not about, wow, make me feel better. This is chop my head off. This is bleed, suffer, and die stuff. This is lose your life. This is give yourself up stuff. They come to the base of the mountain, and there's a boy that has full of a demon, and the disciples couldn't cast him out, although they'd been casting out demons, but they couldn't cast this one out. And they came to Jesus privately and said, why couldn't we? And Jesus said, you've argued with me. You didn't buy into the bleeding, suffering, and dying. You didn't buy into the fact that, hey, this is just pat you on the head and forgive you. This is a death. You've got to lose your life. At the core of your system, you've got to give yourself up. Because only when you lose do you win. And if you seek to save your life, you will lose it. There is no question about it. Jesus goes into a house. The disciples come, red-faced. They've been fighting. What have they been fighting about? Which one of us gets to be number one? Jesus said, brother, you're not getting this, are you? See, you're focused on position. You're focused on, well, listen, I'm the strongest. You're focused on, well, listen, I can put you down. Well, listen, I always win the ball game. You win. See, you're not getting this. This is about, guys, you've got a problem deep at the internal core of your life. Self-centeredness. That demands its own way and spills through your masculinity, your femininity, and just exposes itself continually. And now you're fighting over position, guys. And listen, if you don't deal with this, let me give you, and he gives these 2 verses. Saying, you got to deal with this. This is really, wow. You got to come to grips with this. Because if you don't, this will be absolute destruction for you. So in these 2 places, he sets this whole thing up, describing, guys, the answer to the need in the inner core of your heart. Youth camps. I was at the altar every youth camp, confessing my sins. Every revival I was at the altar, confessing my sins. My dad said it took him all summer to beat out of me what the school put in me all year long. I dealt in this. And we talked about this Wednesday night. But I wouldn't come. I didn't want to. Even my approach to Christianity was a what? A self-centered thing. See, I can stand up here and say, don't you want to go to heaven? Well, any idiot is going to say yes. Don't you want peace? Well, yeah. Don't you want happiness? Well, duh. Don't you want to be good looking? Strike that one. See, we're all going to say yes. But do you realize the drive of every single one of them is what? All about me. I gotta. When you come to the sexuality of Matthew chapter 5 that we're dealing with, do you realize at the core of the heart is self-centeredness, and the nature of self-centeredness that reaches into the sexuality of the whole expression of sexuality, your masculinity, your femininity, and gives total expression to self-centeredness? Do you realize what that looks like? When you use your entire sexuality for the satisfaction of yourself? Do you understand why divorce takes place time after time after time after time in our marriages? Do you understand why? Because at the core, it's not just a forgivable thing. At the core is this, I want to use you. You are here for my benefit. And do you realize when two people come together and they use each other, that eventually will wear thin because you're not going to cooperate? And I can always find somebody who appears to want to cooperate better than you. And the ultimate end result of that is what? Not one flesh. See, to come into one flesh, what has to happen? Man, I got to die to everything I am and everything I think and everything I desire. I've got to come to death. And it isn't that self isn't good. We discussed that Wednesday night. Self is good. No problem with the self. But the self that is at the center of its own life literally destroys everything it touches. So marriage is destroyed. One flesh is destroyed. Relationships are destroyed. And it spills through my whole sexuality, which is in constant destruction. It was interesting back in the day in youth camps. We'd play ball with the teens. And I had to come to grips with dealing with this. I know it would be hard for you to realize, but in a teen camp, I could be more sarcastic, do better put-downs than any teen could. I was king of the sarcasm. Always won. And in the basketball court, man, I could whip them all. Ping pong, never lost a game. And in the middle of all of that, why do I have to win? And what do I do to a teenager when in front of a whole group I nail him and make fun of him and everybody laughs? And what have I done to him? And when I whip the socks off of a guy in ping pong, how have I made that kid feel? What would be wrong with me losing? What is that? Where does competition come from? Wouldn't it be an amazing thing if all the football teams got saved and they all let each other win? And you realize where this is going. Because Jesus is going to move us into turn the other cheek. Go the second mile. How are you going to do that? I'm not, nobody's going to. Now, whether you go the second mile, whether you turn the other cheek, I don't care. He doesn't care. But what he cares about is, what is it in you that won't allow you to do that? That's the issue. He's, hey, hey! Now, the timing of this is really significant, of this stumbling thing. Because scandalizo is in the present tense, which is the idea in the Greek language of now with continual action. In other words, it isn't, well, yeah, I was a little base back there. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I shouldn't have said that. But that was one moment just 5 months ago. So, hey, that's gone. No, that's not what he's dealing with. See, what he's dealing with is not an event. What he's dealing with is not, I blew it then. What he's dealing with, well, I lost my temper on that one. Well, yeah, I shouldn't have done. See, it isn't dealing with an event. He's dealing with a continual flow of nature within you that's grabbed a hold of your sexuality and is literally spilling through the entirety of your sexuality, dominating everything you say, every look that you have, every thought that's in your brain, every mannerism that you offer, everything in your life is dominated by this nature. And if you say, well, preacher, I know how to handle that, I'll become religious. I'll start reading my Bible. I'll start praying. I'll come to church faithfully. I'll develop into being a teacher. I might even get a call to preach. But do you see that all of those activities could be simply the same self-centered that spills into that drives my, and what you've developed is a phenomenal Pharisee who's operating a whole religion, a legalistic religion that can judge and put people in there, a whole legalistic religion right out of his own. So see, religion isn't the answer, people. Because this isn't just an event we're dealing with. This is I'm working on it. Jesus, this really matters to you, doesn't it? You're not interested in just having people that will join your club. You're not interested in just having people who will take 10 rules and do them. You're not interested in errand boys. You're not interested in just some folks that'll cater to your whims and desires, are you? You're standing on the banks. You're hanging from a cross, waving your arms. Hey! Because you can't stand what's happening to us from the inner core. And Jesus, if you care that much about me, if this is that serious to you, then Lord, I'm going to prostrate myself and position myself and posture myself into a position, if you will enable me, where you can take me and do something at the core of my life that'll change the whole perspective of my sexuality and the expression of it. And thank you, Jesus, because I don't need another rule. I've got so many in my life now. I can't keep them all, and I argue about which one is the greatest. I got so many religious things to do now and experience so much guilt over not doing them that I don't need any more of that. And God, what I need down at my home is not another rule. Don't cheat on your wife. I don't need that. What I need is for you to go to the core of my heart and bring me to crucifixion. Bring me to death. Could you save me this morning from myself? And the stench, the horrible stench of my little selfishness. Heads are bowed. Obviously, the invitation this morning is not come and try Jesus. I'm not inviting you to happiness. Don't bring your bills and lay them on the altar. I'm inviting you to the loss of your life. And we're standing on the bank, waving our arms and screaming. We're kicking in the door, grabbing you by the shoulders. No blame, no, well, you get what you deserve, none of that stuff. Just a deep, deep, divinely oriented love that says, oh, folks, here's the answer. With everything you're struggling in your life, this is the answer. Would you posture yourself today and let Jesus do in you what you can't possibly do? Would you risk losing yourself? Whatever it is that causes you to sin, cut it out. Cut it off. Pluck it out. Cast it from you. But in reality, we know what it is. It's your deep, inner, self-centered heart. And self-centeredness in this moment is going to rise up in your life and say, hey, don't deal with this. This is ridiculous. And the very thing that keeps you from responding this morning is the very thing that's destroying your life. Moments of ceasing.